Fair dinkum.
We can just start now, just even if you just do it as a separate thing. So you do, George, you write your own children's books. Tell us about this, because obviously I've never personally read either of the three. Unfortunately, it's not my age group, 8 to 12 or 6 to 12. So tell us about it. How'd you get into writing children's books? What are these three books about?
So yeah, I'm a published author. I became published around 2016, and I started writing books around 2014.
Okay.
And I actually have 3 books published from a 8-book series. The series is called Childhood Champions.
That sounds sick.
Yeah,
Childhood
Childhood Champions represents all ethnic young people that are between the ages of 6 to 9, and they represent an Arab, African American, a Puerto Rican, a Malaysian, and an African kid that basically have real life stories, and they're all lessons learned in each of the stories. So the stories are not really religiously motivated. All of the characters happen to be Muslim, but the stories are really designed to teach life lessons to young people from that age group, just positive lessons that talk about brotherhood, safety. They promote prayer.
So what was the reason that you got into, like, 2014? How old were you then? Like late 30s? What made you want to write children's books,
Well, I did notice that there was a lack of diversity at the time when I was into creating children's books. There was a lack of diversity that represented young Muslim youth that were from the communities that I'm from. I didn't really see many characters that represented African American young people in children's books. So I wanted to create something that represented the community of young people that's diverse from where I'm from, because it's good to see representation of yourselves in books. Yeah.
What type of life lessons are in it? Because I've realized whenever I watch like Lion King or watch like old Disney movies, I don't know if you do watch it.
I do.
But you kind of see life lessons that's not just for kids, but it's for adults too. And it's like, be patient or be steadfast. Something comes, like, don't let it affect you, or don't let your ego grow too big. And it's like, that actually affects me now as a 21-year-old, but it's made for a 6-year-old. So what kind of life lessons are you trying to teach these kids, Because it's a very sensitive age group, 6 to 9.
It's a good question.
Yeah,
for the most part, I try to I try to be a little more versatile. So some of the things talk about racism. It talks about accepting other people from other ethnic groups and backgrounds. I have a story that I've created that talks about a hijabi that has her hijab pulled off and young people teasing her because she was different. Okay. And her
that's
eventually, so in the story, she eventually teaches the young people the reasons that she wear it. She allowed them to come home and speak with her family and the other kids' parents. So there was so many lessons in this particular book that'll be coming out soon. And so most of my books are based around life lessons like that.
Which one was your first book? Can I have a look at it?
The first book that I published was
No Ordinary Day.
No Ordinary Day.
Okay.
And
show the camera a bit.
No Ordinary Day was an interesting one, man.
So what's this one about?
So I don't want to give too much away.
You got to read it.
So No Ordinary Day was it was based around promoting
That's great.
promoting the 5 young people going to school and being not forced, that's not the best word to use, but they were studying Quran and
they're getting
during
pushed
their
to go.
recitation of the Quran, they were able to, as a reward, they were able to meet a professional soccer player who was a public figure.
Damn.
And through reciting Quran, they won a competition, and they were able to tour the facility from the famous soccer player. And they walked in on him praying, and he was a constant reminder to them to continue to pray. And in the end, he actually scored the winning goal and pulled his shirt up that said Allah is great. And it was just a lot of...
that's like 5 good things in one book.
Yeah, so
I want to read
so
that.
the book had quite a few reminders in it to pray. It was teamwork. It promoted school. It promoted education, studying Quran. There's a strong Islamic undertone to all of my books, even though they're not religious.
What made you want to start writing a book? You know what I mean? Were you always into writing growing up, or?
Well, I hold a English and psychology degree, so I've always been a writer, and children's books was one of the furthest things from my mind until I started to think about how many ways could I give back to our community. I wanted to start contributing to the young people versus like I wanted to add value, and I knew that I was always good in writing, and as I would just kind of like look around and pick up books, and I just gained an interest in children's books and started looking for ethnic characters, Muslim characters, and I didn't see a large variety at the time. Now there's quite a few Muslim authors, quite a few ethnic characters out there. But at the time, when I created my characters and came up with the concept Childhood Champions, I didn't see that. So that was kind of a motivation for me to create ethnic characters, create real life stories from a Western perspectives, and real life stories of young people from where I'm from, actually like some of their experiences that can be universal. Many of the children's books that I would see that had ethnic characters, most of them were of Arab descent. Yeah, exactly. And they were based in like a mosque in the Middle East. And I was like, well, for me, like that doesn't represent where I'm from. Like I wanted to kind of like have young people to identify just, you know, in a major city and just doing things that we do without dressing in cultural clothing. So I wanted to just kind of have something for our young people in the Western society to
they can relate to.
with.
That's what you need, you know.
Relatable.
Sometimes like there's so many different, for example, even Muslim names, but not every book Muhammad, Ibrahim, you know, the prophets' names. But then now you go Khadija, Aisha for the sisters. But then now you go see books and it's like different. Like I read Hakim in there. It's like names like, okay, that's different. You know, Ashraf Abdul Walid. There's not a lot of books or option books named after us. But now in the future, when it expands, it's like, okay, you can relate. I'm Somali, I'm South African, I'm this. It's like, okay, I grew up similar.
Even on top of that, like the stereotypes in terms of Muslim countries, like the first things you're going to think of is like Saudi and the Malaysia, Indonesia, and all that kind of stuff. But then you mentioned Puerto Rico before, do you know what I mean? And that caught out to me straight. I was like, Puerto Rico Muslim, do you know what I mean? Even though Muslims are like from all over the world, but when do you hear about a Puerto Rican Muslim? And that's good
I've never met one.
Exactly. But there is a Puerto Rican Muslim out there who cannot necessarily look up to someone that's from Saudi Arabia or something like that. Do you know what I mean? That's of Arab descent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So where I'm from, it's like my community is based. There's a lot of people from the Latin community that make up that percentage of like because I've actually had parents reach out to me and say, wow, you made a hijabi Muslim that represents my daughter who's Puerto Rican, or my daughter who's Dominican or Colombian. So those communities are out there where I'm from. So I try to represent ethnic communities that are not represented as much in the children's books. And I actually have 3 new characters that I will be introducing in the next few books, and you know, they'll be pretty interesting, man. So
what's the process like with coming up with a book? Do you just write a book in terms of like a certain story or like a topic, or do you release it like in terms of segments, in terms of this is occurring and there's going to be like another season? You know what I mean? Like a season of books?
No, what I do is there's a combination of things. Sometimes I write when things come to mind. I'll just write things down until I'll just take notes. I'll just write some things. Sometimes I'll mix a little bit of real life experiences from a situation that happened in the masjid or on an Islamic community event where I noticed something with some young people doing some things, and I can create my own storyline off of that. So there's a 3 or 4 step process. Sometimes it's a combination of my own ideas along with things that I've seen in the community. The young people are playing together, young people having a disagreement with and trying to find a solution, or even just like, you know, young people studying. I just take these things on board and create my own stories.
Yeah.
Is this like, I know you've done some youth work, and this is obviously from like 6 to 9. I think your youth work's a bit for older age group. Did any of this link together? Like you saw those kind of gaps in the youth in like where they were taught or values, that kind of thing, like there wasn't a lot of representation. So is that why you kind of started getting into the youth field?
No, I think there's overwhelming representation of leaders in the communities. I think I just found a unique role. I felt responsible as a male and as a Muslim, as a person who contributed to destroying my community. I felt that was my responsibility to find ways to add value and give back to my community, because for many years I promoted things in my community, and I've done things in my community that was destructive, and it wasn't building a positive community.
So now you wanted to do the opposite and start
Yeah.
putting value in people's lives.
Yeah.
And you think like, so you obviously do books for 6 to 9. Or how do you try to do that for the older age group? You know, us, some of our audience is like 15-year-olds. We have younger siblings. We try to bring value, but often as siblings, it's difficult, you know? And social media now, it's like a lot of people don't even want to gain beneficial knowledge or kind of, you know, take that advice on taking life more serious or...
Because it's the norm nowadays, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, my children's books are actually for 6 to 12-year-olds, but I use my own personal life experiences to touch teenagers and young adults. I go to I've gone to prisons all over the world. I've gone to orphanages all over the world. Through my Childhood Champions books, I've been able to build 12 water wells in developing countries. I was actually the very first Muslim in the state of Victoria to teach drugs and alcohol in the Muslim community specifically. So I've gone all around the state of Victoria teaching Muslim communities, from the Eritrean community to the Lebanese community to the Somali community. I taught them about substances and things that are available, resources in their communities. I've actually done lectures. I've done panel interviews. So basically, I worked as a drug and alcohol advisor and youth worker, basically, so to speak, in the Muslim community. So there are so many other things that I add value to and bring for the younger generation. And
do you still do that today? Or
I haven't done it in quite some times because I took a step back because the Muslim community, there's a sense of taboo around certain things like drugs, sex, things like that. So to be honest with you, I just took a break because when I would go to the Muslim community and teach the community about substance abuse, about some of our young girls, Muslim young women wearing hijab or prostituting, doing ice, these things exist. Like these are things that we shouldn't be silent about. Some of our young brothers are going to the masjid, but they have psychosis. They are dealing with thoughts of suicide. Everything is not based around a jinn. Sometimes the drugs affect our minds and allow us to behave this way. So everyone wants ruqya every time something happens. Sometimes things are not.
Just pray and it'll go away.
Just pray, or just send your son back to their homeland country, to Somalia or to Lebanon. That's not always the solution. So what happened is, throughout my this is what I did for a living. I was paid to do this, but I sacrificed my time and went to multiple communities doing this for free just to try to start educating our communities. And the backlash for it just became unbearable. It was almost like carrying a refrigerator on my back because it's taboo. People are uncomfortable.
People I know people don't want to speak about. Even us, sometimes there's certain topics we want to talk about, and it's like, nah, it'll get too much backlash. But then we're kind of understanding that we got to do what we want to do. To a certain extent, and bismillah, you leave the rest to Allah, you know. And
that's kind of what happened. So I would go to these communities and parents would be angry. Oh, brother, why would you talk about this? And brother, and they don't understand that these things do exist. So what happened is the intentions and the efforts that I had to teach the community, it became a negative, you know, versus like. And I would tell the parents, it's your responsibility to educate yourselves on these substances that I show on this projector, so you can see this is ice, this is cocaine, this is that. Like, this behavior, you know, could possibly be your son using one of these substances. Like, but the parents most times didn't want to talk about it, and a lot of these young people were having sex. And these are just things that are frowned upon in Islam. So
it's the parents are majority of the time, because I've seen this myself in the communities. The parents themselves are like, what's the word?
They just deny it, or
they
in
denial.
They sleep in the rug.
Like, I know particular guys where, like, they'd come home and they'll be off their face. And alhamdulillah, I've never used it in my life, but I've seen people use it. I've seen people how they are after they've used. And I see him come home, or I see him knocking on his house door, and I'm thinking, this guy, how are you going to go home in that state? But the mum will think automatically, someone gave my son drugs. It wasn't something he'd done. It was somebody else's fault. They're in a state of denial where they believe their kid, due to me teaching him ABC morals when he was 5 years old, he would never do drugs. So
Or taking him to an Islamic school,
yeah,
or taking him to a Saturday school for 2 hours.
yeah,
you
every
know?
single week, or
Subhanallah.
all of that. He he fasts and he prays, all that. He's a good kid. He wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
mean, to be honest with you, I think, just to interject on that, my apologies for cutting you off. One of the biggest mistakes that I've seen that has been counterproductive is always taking that young person, shipping him to
Yeah,
your homeland country, because what happens is that this young person was raised in Australia. The young person is growing up under the culture in Australia. So yeah, this person may be, I'm just going to say for conversation purposes, Somali. This person may be of Somali descent, ethnic background, but this young person didn't grow up in Somalia.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is removing this person from the country that they're growing up in, and you're sending them through a place where they have an identity, but they don't have an attachment because they didn't grow up there. But their identity is a part of that. So the young people, and I've said this because I've seen hundreds of clients, and some people can say, oh, it worked for me, it worked. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of clients that it's the opposite. It makes it worse because they rebel.
Yeah.
rebel, and it's not like in Somalia there's no drugs.
Correct.
There's drugs everywhere. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna chuck you in a plane, take you to some random village in Somalia, and you're gonna be drug free.
They end up coming back worse than they actually left. That's
Yeah,
the
they
worst
do.
part.
Because they meet some guy. Okay, it's like there's a Somali kid from Melbourne that will leave, Somali kid from Sydney that will leave, Somali kid from the UK and the US, and they all go back to the same village, and all of them have the same issue.
Exactly.
There's 8 of them now, and then they back around the same people they had in Australia. So it's just
Yeah, I mean, the shipping a young person away doesn't address the drug and alcohol situation.
Yeah.
At all.
It doesn't address there's always underlying things that pushes this young person to experiment. And it could be, it's a lot of times there's abuse in the home. Some of the young men, they've been, witness violence and domestic violence from the father in the home quite often. The young girls have been sexually abused by a family member. These are things that I would hear often that led to this young person experimenting.
Of course.
And there's few times where the young person is influenced by peer pressure. Most of the time, it's an underlying issue that
Internal.
It comes from
it
domestic
triggered it.
violence. It comes
Yeah.
from sexual
That's-
being sexually
yeah.
abused. It comes from
I never knew that. I was
a lot of things
I always
like
thought
based
friends-
around that.
Yeah, I always
Friends
thought
do have a play, but
Friends do have
it can be
Influence.
50-50 instead of people what they always say, bad friends,
Yeah.
bad friends.
Exactly.
Mm.
You can have bad friends and you have underlying issues, but those underlying issues with the bad friends
Correct.
like trigger that certain action to occur.
Yeah.
So after your years of experience, what kind of things do people do as a way to try to cope with the issue?
Rehabilitate.
Rehabilitation. But like obviously it depends on the circumstances. So what kind of things is at least more likely to work?
I mean that's a difficult one to give you a very answer that will just cover the board. But most times each person is individually their own individual case. So what happens is also in the Muslim community itself, there's a lot of taboo and stigma based around rehab and rehabilitation centers. A lot of our young people, they always have they know best. Oh, my friend was this, my friend heard, I know somebody who went and did this and that. And a lot of times their understanding of these things are not what they think they are. So a lot of times these young people need counseling. They need individual programs set up for them. And
That's
a
true.
lot of times
It's situational.
their assessments have to be carefully reviewed, not only by myself, but other people have to be involved from their doctors, their parents. We have to know like their history, because there's, as I said before, there's a lot of underlying things that play a part. So it'll be being assessed by their psych person, their GP, their mentor. Everyone plays a part, and after you carefully assess them, you put together a plan for this young person. And most times, to be honest with you, the plans are always frowned upon, the young person, because they're afraid of ridicule. Oh, they don't want no one to see them going into rehab. They don't want anyone to know that they're doing this kind of program. So a lot of times they reject the help. You can't force them.
Of course.
Because most times they're of age where they can make their own decisions.
So for us, like Abshir spoke about, he hasn't experienced it, and I haven't experienced it. I don't know about Abdul Wali, that kind of thing. Maybe like even people close to us haven't. What's something that we can do that can help the community? Because it is a normal thing in the community, and we all know it in different communities. But even ethnic communities, they don't talk about it. It's taboo.
Yeah,
So what's something we can do? Is there anything we can do that kind of spreads awareness, helps people?
In terms of drugs and alcohol, substance abuse.
Even just with rehab, with mental health issues, anything across the board that are kind of taboo topics.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you can do is educate yourselves on the substances that you hear that are local in your community. Educate yourselves on the resources available, like, the proper people to call if a friend has this happen, if a friend talks about suicide, know the proper numbers to call. Educate yourselves on, like, the resources to be able to help this person to pass it along. I mean, the biggest thing is to understand body language, understand the reactions to drugs, how people behave, and some of the things that people say. Sometimes you can tell, like, wow, this brother is talking crazy, and his body language is a bit
off. Yeah.
So understanding signs, understanding body language, understanding paying attention closely to what they say, and if you understand basics about some of these substances, you can say, wow, like, this brother is ticking boxes from using this substance. Like, bro, are you all right? Like, chat with him.
You kind of prejudgment. You kind
have
of
some water.
analyze the situation.
Yeah. So just familiarize yourselves with, like, ask around, like, brother,
Did studying psychology get you into this?
Nah, you know what? Just kind of like fell into it, to be honest with you.
Because Suhail and I love psychology.
Yeah.
Even all of us really do. And we got a psychologist on a couple months ago, and we just love it because just learning about the mind, educating yourself.
Yeah.
Because there's so many general things about ourselves, our nature, and our community that we don't know.
Yeah.
And if we don't learn to understand, analyze the situation, we'll never know. You kind of have to keep educating yourself. And it's like so many things just get swept under the rug, so many things we don't even realize. It's like, subhanAllah,
Human
Just
behavior.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, when you were mentioning how some certain ethnic communities send their children off to other countries and stuff as a form of dealing with situations, and you said you've dealt with like hundreds of clients, have you actually seen like anyone go overseas and actually come back and be rehabilitated? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because I understand, like, generally, like, it doesn't work, and that's not the form of method, like the best form of method. But has it occurred?
Yeah, I've seen a very small percentage of young people go overseas, and what I've found, and these are all, everything that I'm saying is based off of my experience with dealing with multiple ethnic groups of young people who've gone overseas. Some haven't. So this isn't me giving my own opinion. This is from fact-based experience. So some of the young people that I've seen have success at going overseas and cleaning up their behavior, parting ways with substance abuse. The things that helped them was to connecting back with their cultural roots. Some of them growing up here in Australia, they may be they identify with this ethnic group, but when they actually go home to their homeland country, they really connect to the roots of their ethnic background, and they go back to more cultural belief system. They feel connected being in their country, their homeland. They're most times they're going back to poverty-stricken countries where they have they appreciate the things that they come from, leaving Australia to go to a war-torn country or a poverty-stricken country. So they go back with appreciation when they come back. They're like, they value the appreciation of being able to have free health care, or being able to, just go to the shopping center with your friends and not be in danger. Just small things. So sometimes fear, connection with your culture and your roots, and just
Gratitude.
and understanding that these people don't have, and these people are living in poverty.
And they also don't have the option to go back home.
Correct.
Like you go back home at 12. You know, at 20 you might go back, or even 25. It's like, but they might not ever get the chance. You're gonna come here, running water whenever you want, food, good money. You can live kind of family.
Correct. So these things are just a few to name of like some of the success I've seen with some of the young people from going overseas. But I would say, in my experience, majority of the time, that's not the case.
That's not the
but
case.
It does happen.
Yeah, you have to be very open-minded to go back home and come back rehabilitated.
I don't know if you want to talk about it, but how did you become a Muslim?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Yeah, because I knew before the podcast started, I knew that you revert.
Yeah,
But I didn't know how you became revert.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I grew up Christian, so I was a Christian by birth, by affiliation, but I was
Baptized?
I was baptized as a kid, but wasn't a practicing Christian. I didn't come from a practicing family. My grandmother, who was the anchor of my family, she was from the Deep South.
Deep South of America.
Deep South in Louisiana.
People don't know.
Yeah,
back in America.
So in America, back home in America, my grandmother came from Louisiana. She was from the Deep South, and she very, very, she was the most practicing, God-fearing woman I knew. She was a Christian, and
was she the anchor of the family as well?
She was also the anchor of my family, and we, as a family, weren't really practicing Muslim. I'm sorry, we weren't practicing Christians, but we were. If you were to ask me at the time, I would have identified as a Christian.
Yeah, a lot of people are like that. Even here, it's just culture or family. My grandma's this, my grandpa's that. Yeah.
So my grandmother was she was a nationalist in terms of, she grew up in a Jim Crow era, the time of segregation.
Yeah, Louisiana.
My grandmother grew up in the civil rights movement. So my grandmother was very active in with Nelson Mandela, the Nation of Islam. My grandmother was very pro-black and very active in rights through the civil rights for people of color. So growing up Christian, as I gained life experiences, becoming an adult, I started to kind of question why that I just couldn't find that balance in my life, that happiness. I felt like something was missing. And it wasn't until 2006 that I was traveling overseas. I was actually in Dubai in 2006, and I heard the adhan for the first time. And, I heard it. In the beginning, it was funny because I was quite annoyed by it because I kept hearing it. I was there for like 3 weeks. And I was like, I was like, yo, what is this? Yeah. So I kept hearing it, man. I just kept hearing it, and I was like, damn, this is really like annoying, dude. So once I heard it, and it was probably like, dude. And I was like, man, let me go and investigate this. So, it's Muslims everywhere. It was very easy for me to ask someone, what was it? And they explained, this is the call to prayer, and blah, blah, blah. And there's one mosque in Dubai where I was at that they allow non-Muslims. So I went and I just said, look, take me to the mosque. I want to learn more about this adhan and like what Muslims do. I went to the mosque and I walked in and I said, look, I'm not Muslim, but I'm just curious, man, because I'm a forward thinker. I have foresight. I like to learn, and
even just learning about other religions. Actually, it's intuitive. It's interesting.
It was interesting. So what I did was, I was like, I want to watch you guys pray. All the Muslims were flowing in to pray, and I stood there, and when I watched them in sujood, I was kind of like blown away. I was like, wow, because this was a very delicate time of my life. I was going through a weird space because I was kind of trying to find myself, trying to figure out things. I was in a questioning God at the time because, it's like
purpose of life.
Yeah, purpose of life, all of these kind of things.
Is that why you were in Dubai? Or were you in Dubai unrelated?
I was in Dubai for work, and I just was like, man, this is deep. I was like, wow, they're actually putting their head on the floor, like worshiping God. That's like the humility in that was so interesting for me. And I was like, that's the lowest point you can go, you know, physically, like, wow, to the ground. So I kind of was, I was impressed by that, and I was kind of like intrigued by it. So I left there and was kind of like, okay, cool, I'm gonna learn about Islam a little bit, but I wanted to do it without outside interference.
Okay.
Did you have like a pre Dubai bias of Islam? Because before you went to Dubai, I'm assuming you never heard that then before. You probably had a certain particular view of Muslims. Like, did that sort of? Did you have a particular view of Muslims before?
Nah, I grew up with Muslims my whole life.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
so
Sorry about that,
so
yeah.
like I never really had a any kind of stereotypes. Muslims,
Even-
Jews, no one, to be honest. Just because I got friends.
You're from New York. Even
New York, yeah.
9/11 didn't affect you, like,
9/11 didn't affect me.
because you kind of knew Muslims. So it's like,
Yeah, I mean, 9/11. To be honest, I didn't believe it was Muslims to begin with.
Okay.
Like I just don't really believe things from the government.
it's
So-
like what you said before. As
Yeah,
soon as you
that's
put some
understandable.
interest into it and intuitiveness, like, and you kind of learn about the situation, like, that doesn't seem likely.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean,
a lot
you
of the
know,
time it's like that. Yeah.
and when you have friends that represent all ethnic groups,
Yeah.
all religious backgrounds, I have friends who are Jewish. I have
Mm.
friends who are Christian, Catholics. So I didn't really have a bias, to be honest, with
Yeah.
anyone. So most of my friends weren't. It's sort of like my friends were Muslims, but I didn't know like what a practicing
Yeah.
Muslim looked like, what culture looked like for a Muslim, because I only knew friends who say, "Yo, Assalamu alaikum," this, that. Then brothers would be carrying weapons or coming home from jail. Those are that's what I knew
Yeah.
as a Muslim, to be honest with you. I didn't really know. I didn't really have an understanding of what it takes to represent this or that. So I really didn't know, but there was no bias.
Oh.
So is it fair to say that when you were in Dubai at that time, that it all became apparent to you?
It's safe to say when I went to Dubai, I was just exposed to the UAE culture of Muslims.
Gotcha.
I learned I learned the differences between culture and Islam or whatever, because like before, like, because going there, it's almost like, man, like, you know, they don't dress the way Muslims dress where I'm from. So
And you're in the heart of it. You're in a Muslim
yeah,
country.
in a Muslim
Yeah.
country. So it was just interesting, and like I was learning, people were explaining things to me, like dress and certain things that were of their culture and all of that. So it was beautiful, but I was just so intrigued. But I realized that if I go back to America and let people know that I was interested in Islam, that I would probably be just railroaded or like just they would just probably rake me across the coals. So I wanted to write down my questions about Muslims, about Islam, and I wanted to do it privately without other people's opinions to sway my
Which is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
With a lot of things, even like writing a children's book, even when you wanted to do that kind of thing, or any of us even starting a podcast, doing anything that's against the norm in your community, it's very difficult to get everyone to say, "Oh, no, we got your back. We got your back."
Yeah, because it gets messy when you tell, first of all, like, you know, after 9/11, like it was, people had issues with Muslims. So me coming out to say that I'm interested in Islam would have been a train wreck, because people would have been judgmental, and it's very difficult for me to say that what certain people that mean the world to me wouldn't hurt me or wouldn't sway my opinion. Like, let's just say, for example, my mother. If I said to my mom, "Hey, Mom, I want to become a Muslim," and if she gave me a negative reaction, of course it would bother me. That's my mom.
Yeah.
That didn't happen, but I'm just saying, like, that's an
it would have
example.
potentially.
Of course.
And the stereotypes would have been very fresh then, do you know what I mean? Because this is in
Yeah.
2004,
2006.
9/11,
2006.
2006.
Yeah.
I got a question. Do you remember any of those questions you wrote down that first came to mind when you're interested in Islam, that you kept to yourself?
Yeah, I used to the same ones that we hear all the time. I wanted to ask about, like, you know, if committing, blowing up things or committing suicide, would you get virgins? You know, why do Muslims do you know, all the jihadi stuff and all of this?
The general
kind of,
questions
the
of
general
what,
questions that a non-Muslim don't know. That stereotypes kind of creates a black eye for a Muslim. Like, So it was more like putting the carriage before the horse. It was like I wanted to ask the hard questions that I didn't understand, and kind of like get some simplicity around, like, you know, the stuff that makes sense. Because like, you know, when I was reading things, I started to be like, wow, certain things that I started to read, what happened is how it worked for me, how I started to see results was I would learn something about Islam, I would apply it, I would see the results of me applying it, and I would like the results. And then after the results, I tried to continue that to force change in my thinking. I cleaned up my language. I cleaned up my way of dressing. I adopted the kufi.
Looks good on you, bro.
Thanks, brother. I adopted the just my Islam helped me to bridge the relationship back with my mom and
Kinship,
to bring pieces together with family members. So I started to see the fruits of the things that I applied, and I started to like the results.
Okay.
And I continued, and then it started to make me more aware of being a support system, a mentor, all of these things in my environment, in my community. And not only in my community, I started to take that to other communities. But what happened is it took me I accepted Islam in 2011. So it took me many years through this process, because I was like, this is like eating an elephant. I don't want to go too hard, too fast, and then fall on my face with, like, you know, become extreme or have
which is very common for reverts too.
it
Because
happens.
like you would live the life of like drugs or girls or whatever, like not praying every single day, and then when you start to find the enlightenment, prayer, and good things happening to you, see how you see the fruits of your labor, you start seeing like, okay, maybe I need to go harder and harder and harder, which is, it works for them, which is good, but then for the everyday Muslim, like most of the time it doesn't, you know. In the Western world, like it is harder to go as extreme, but for reverts it's more common because they've seen both sides, they have the enlightenment.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I was afraid of. I was just kind of like, there was fear in the beginning, because you have to understand, like, even though I wasn't a practicing Christian, like my core belief system revolved around my family, and, you know, at the time it was, you know, everything that Christianity stood on, even though I wasn't practicing. So it's fearful when you're looking to challenge what you've been taught your entire life. And one of the other things that really pushed me to go further with Islam is that I started to challenge my family, my grandmother, my mother, the hierarchy system of my family, because I started to ask, I started to say things like, man, like, I've never studied or researched anything that they have taught me in terms of religion. I only regurgitate what someone has told me. So I don't even know if these things are accurate.
Even in the Christian belief.
Correct.
Yeah.
And as I started to ask my family, my grandmother, they had never researched anything either. It was because of someone told them this.
Cultural thing.
So they keep passing it. And I was saying to myself, I don't know how well that sits with me. Like, I'm just regurgitating what you told me without reading it, without studying it.
Without comprehending it. You're just using words like a parrot.
So it was empty. And
where's this in the timeline, by the way, when you started like opposing the hierarchy and stuff?
that was probably around 2007 through 2009. I started becoming
so even early on learning about Islam.
Yeah.
And did you answer those questions you initially wrote by then, or were you still looking for the answers?
It took quite some time because I wanted to I didn't want to get overwhelmed with too many people giving me information because I had one bad experience that helped me understand that early. I was like, with having too many people involved, it becomes messy.
It never works, yeah.
It never works. And you get very confused. Yeah. And then being a person who was in an interesting space, I didn't want to become confused or overloaded with information.
Because you were confused yourself.
I was very confused.
And if you listen to confused people, it's just going to make a worse situation, yeah.
Yeah, so during that time period, from 2006, I became incredibly interested in Islam.
Alhamdulillah.
2007 to 2010 was like the reading, the just asking questions, going to mosques to embrace and understand. I had 2 bad experiences at mosques too that kind of almost made me kind of stop 2 actually. And
what happened?
So during that time frame between 2007 and 2010, I realized that me reading and learning about Islam was sometimes the information I read online may not be accurate. So I wanted to find some practicing Muslims, go to a mosque and kind of connect and try to see if there's mentors or someone can help me a bit. So one day I just went to a community, and you know, I didn't know the etiquette of a Muslim at the time. I didn't really research a lot of it, and I had been smoking marijuana at the time, and I had been just kind of doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, and I had a cut off shirt on, and had my headphones on, listening to music, and I was in a you know, I was not in the best space to be entering the house of Allah, but I went to the mosque and people couldn't smell the marijuana on me at the time, so I went in and I was explaining to them like I'm interested in learning about Islam. But they smelled the marijuana, so they were like, brother, don't come in here. I got tattoos all over me. And they're like, don't come in here like this. Get out of here. You know, you smell like you've been smoking and tattoos and blah, blah, blah. So I got defensive, obviously. I got defensive.
Naturally.
Naturally. So I called some friends. They came over to cause a problem. And it turned into a mess, bro. And I
First experience at the mosque.
Yeah, my first experience at the mosque was terrible, and I took it personal, like at the time, because I wasn't in my right space.
Yep.
Brothers weren't really welcoming; they were very just a bit.
But I guess that's normal, though. Do you know what I mean? A curious person who gets sort of like turned away, like it's a normal reaction. Do you know what I mean?
It's a bump in the road, and it's always supposed to be that Allah plans like how much do you want it, because the hidayah, it's not for everyone. You know, guidance isn't for everyone. Especially to the extent of reverting, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, but I mean, to that story, what happened is a day or so later, I actually went back there and I actually apologized to the community for getting so upset, and I brought other people there with intentions to fight, etc. So I felt guilty about that, because I'm like, man, I'm here trying to become a Muslim, and I was trying to justify it, like, but they were doing this to me, and that's the way. So I felt guilty, and I went back later, and I apologized, and I just said, look, I just want to learn. I'm not here to try to whatever. I didn't know I was supposed to take my shoes off. I didn't know, like, you know, even though I had that one experience in Dubai, but I had been smoking, and I just didn't know. So
and you forget.
I didn't. I forgot. So
it could even be Dubai culture. You don't know.
Yeah, correct, bro. So that was a really poor experience, and then I had another experience where I went, and I made sure I was covered properly. I wasn't doing any substances or anything. And I went in and I said, look, I'm here. I'm not Muslim. I want to learn about Islam. I'm just looking for somebody to help. Now I'm over flooded with people. Aki, what's your phone number? Let's go to lunch. I'll give you coffee. Take my number. Here's some books. Here's this.
Sometimes there's too much. Too much information.
Yeah. So I became overwhelmed in that situation. And I was just like, man, I can't do this. So I left. And I left with I think I got 1 or 2 brothers' numbers, and I left feeling overwhelmed. And I was like, man, everybody wanted my number. Everybody was giving me books. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to read. And it was just kind of like too overwhelming for me to digest.
It happens a lot of the time when people are even interested in learning more about Islam or meeting someone. Everyone always jumps and thinks they're the right person, you know? And everyone, obviously, it's the right intention and stuff, but sometimes people have to take that step back for the greater good.
It's like the same with the internet. Like if you try searching Islam on your own on the internet and you get overwhelmed with all this information, you can't like digest which one is
correct and which is
what's not. You know, it's the same with in person.
Yeah. So it became so after that I became very comfortable with the results that I had started to see from learning about Islam and applying it. And
what did mom and grandma say?
Yeah, that's
what happened when you went over the edge? Like, what's that story?
After accepting Islam in 2011, my grandmother was actually really happy. She was very
Subhanallah.
yeah, because my
Damn.
grandmother grew up in an era where she followed Muslims.
Malcolm.
She followed Malcolm X.
Mm.
She grew up in that civil rights movement, but she was actually very happy for me because I had found that foundation. I needed something to follow, and she saw that I was really serious about it, and I had applied the changes, and she saw my the way I dressed changed. She saw the way that my character and my language, everything had took a shift. So my grandmother was pleased, and then a lot of people thought that it was just a short term fashion statement.
trend.
Or
That happens a
trend.
lot.
Yeah, so I remained firm in my commitment to Islam. Not a perfect Muslim, but I remained firm and practicing. And I also my mom, she didn't really she was shocked more than anything and just kind of like confused, like I don't understand why. Like she was kind of like that, and it took me to. My mom really just didn't understand. She just was like, I can't understand why would you do this. But over time, like her heart softened, and she was able to really learn more about Islam. Now my mom is really active and defends Islam to people who are not people who are not
Educated.
Educated. My mom will say things like, my son is a Muslim. That's not true. That's not accurate. Stuff like that.
Often you see that a lot of family members, they see reverts become better people.
Yeah.
More kind, nicer with their family. They keep the kinship, they keep the relationships, they help each other out. And they're like, Islam has made him a better person, so Islam must be good, kind of thing. Which is...
Yeah. And that's what happened. I mean, because I was a person that was I was lost in the world. I was like, I had a lot of worldly ways that trickled down to, from substance abuse to, taking advantage of women, poor relationships with my family, including my mother. I was promoting things in my community that's destructive, and I just had my thought process was really like it was negative and very abusive in terms of just like not really promoting positivity or it was just all about promoting foolishness. Yeah.
But often that's the case for families, because families, like when you're not on the best path or you're not in the best situation, they're always wanting you to do what's best for you. And when you do a 180 and you start to like reap the results, and they can see that you've said I'm going to do this, and then they start to see actions and all that kind of stuff. They become like this. You can take Islam out of it. You know what I mean? Like, let's just say me as a young 20-year-old trying to convince my mum that I want to do this and do these big things into the world. You know what I mean? If I don't start committing to that and like start living up to those expectations and showing results to my parents, and they're going to be worried for you. You know what I mean? It's the same thing when you're going to make a big life decision as for example, becoming a Muslim and doing a full 180, and like they start to see your character results. Obviously they're going to be like,
it's not easy.
I think in America, like even here, the youth is often like lost. Would you say we're not guided because we just hear what our parents say and we think that's the right way, and then when we start to question it, we don't really believe in it because it's just words to us.
exactly.
Unfortunately. So I want to talk to you about what's been happening now in the States. Because obviously there's even now in the movements, there's a lot of people we're seeing, that have a purpose and they're purpose driven, and then they're always talking about like even the looters, people that are kind of finding like a loophole. And obviously you lived in America, I can't really say anything because all I see is the news and what Twitter. I didn't have Twitter, but what these guys tell me on Twitter. So what do you think about what's been going on, even living there, like your own experiences?
Yeah, well,
kind of thing.
Being an American, man, and being raised
where
in
you from in America?
My entire life. Come from New York City. Like,
that was for the podcast.
coming from America, man, coming from New York, some people, they misunderstand being a patriot. Me, I'm an American citizen, man, but I'm definitely not a patriot. I'm not a person that's advocating for the flag or for this or for that, because these things have always been oppressive to black people. And I think right now this is just the beginning of what's should have come a long time ago.
100%.
But many people that are ethnic or minorities have faced their own versions of discrimination. So when I talk about these topics, I try to highlight other communities do face their forms of discrimination. But right now, the things that's going on in America, man, this is really something that my community has been plagued with, man. This is basically modern day lynching. This is like taking us back to the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, man, like where, the Ku Klux Klan would come to our communities and just burn our communities down and hang our family members from trees. The Atlantic slave trade, more than 400 years of oppression and horrendous acts, man, from separating our families and, our cultures and our languages and just stealing our everything from us, man, to systematic racism. To black people, we've grown in America. We faced so many things that people need to understand our history first, from, Jim Crow to redlining to the civil rights movement to systemic racism, to lynching, to the Atlantic slave trade, to the Chinese Act, to the Tuskegee experiment, to the list can go on and on and on. And, why we don't have generational wealth. White people, white slave owners, they had a 200-year head start on us. So I think this is just, the crack epidemic, the prisons being privatized to put us in prison and to gain free labor off of us and to slap us with felonies and things to minimize us from getting ahead in jobs, and the banking institutions working against us, credit working against us. So
it's almost as the system is against
the system is the system needs to be dismantled. We need reparations. We need a lot of people to really understand this history for us first, because this white supremacy ideology has been oppressing us since the beginning of time. So we can't get ahead with the system being designed against us. So I think what's happening now is very was a long time coming. And
as a person who experienced it firsthand, do you sort of wish that you were there at the moment? Because I know someone who's in Australia at the moment who's also American, and she made a comment along the lines that she's grown up in America all her life, blah blah blah, and the only time when she sees some sort of real form of change, you know what I mean? It might not be the best form of change, but it's some form of change. She wishes she was there, experience it. Would you agree with that?
I've been dealing with it my entire life. I went to college in down south in America where the civil rights movement started. Like, I've seen Ku Klux Klan rallies. I've been a part of marching and rallies. So this isn't new for me. My entire life is in America. So I've been a part of some of these social changes. And when Black Lives Matter first was invented, Trayvon Martin was killed, all of these things, I've been a part of many of these movements. And I just think that, it's just, it's really a difficult space and interesting time that we're in. But we actually have the power is in our hands in terms of because the world, a lot of the world loves our culture. They loves us as athletes. They love our music. They love to see us entertain. But when it comes to our struggle, no one wants to be a part of it. Everyone wants to, right now, what I'm saying is that with our athletes and our financial, because Muslims and black folks, bro, we spend the most money. So if we were to be able to maintain our money amongst just us and our communities and oppress these, not give our money to these big corporations, etc., bro, do you know the changes that will be made instantly? Because dollars is what they really worry about. We won't change no laws with just a few riots or this or that. We need things changed in Congress. We need our athletes to be like the athletes in the past, like the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars, the Jim Browns, the Muhammad Alis. They went to Congress. They used their star power because people want to see them perform at the highest level in their sport. If we had our athletes doing this kind of stuff now, going to Congress, not going out there and playing basketball,
standing up.
Standing up, and we're not gonna play if you know this doesn't change. That's when we'll gain some momentum, man, and some change. But you know, it's sort of like it falls on deaf ears because like for years we've been marching for hundreds of years peacefully. They've sicked dogs on us. Angry white mobs have attacked us, spraying us down with water hoses throughout the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King, he protested and marched peacefully. They gunned him down, assassinated him. Like, we have hundreds of black figures who spoke on our behalf that were nonviolent, that were killed. So you know, anything that we do, it's always combated with something else. It's like Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, blue lives matter. You know, oh, why are they rioting? We've protested and rioted peacefully for hundreds of years. No one's still doesn't.
It hasn't changed anything.
So how can the oppressor tell you how to feel, how to react, or what to do when you're oppressed? The oppressor is going to tell you how to respond.
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make any sense. So I think it's needed what's happening, man. We need this change. We do.
But then again, how do you beat a system that's designed to...
Correct.
You know what I mean? Because it was only last year that I learned about how, like, everyone abuses drugs. You know what I mean? It's a thing that's within communities, not just black people.
Yeah.
And the whole Ronald Reagan thing where
Correct.
he specifically made laws that were targeting black people. Yeah. So then if they were seen with drugs, and boom, they'll be incarcerated on top of that. And it's just like, what can you really do? But then I like one of the ideas that you said where we maintain within each other as a community rather than spending it and like
spend money on yourselves
and fueling these like
communities.
Like, keep your money too for generational wealth. Because if you just, unless you spend it on assets, thing that you can give to your children and keep on doing that, you know, and be successful and make each other successful too. Because a lot of things is we put each other down. You know, I know in ethnic and minority groups, whenever someone else excels, it's like, oh, we spoke about yesterday, Abshir and I were talking about, it's like when someone else excels, like, oh, he's an outlier. It's like, let's make it more common that you see these minority groups excelling.
Think about how
all levels.
Think about the situation with George Floyd. One of the reasons why he's in that situation was because a man from Arab descent didn't trust that $20 note was actually real, and that brought about the whole situation. Do you know what I mean? So
he owned. There was Allah Alam, we probably shouldn't speak about it because we don't know the full details. But they said like he owned the store, and it was a 17-year-old worker, a female working, and there's rules if someone has a counterfeit bill. But him just making, even if you just make the call, it's all on the cop really for the reaction. Because if you do think something's counterfeit, you have to call the cops.
No, but the whole stereotype idea. Do you know what I mean? It all started with trusting another minority group. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really plagues our community, man, the black community, is that when something happens to us, it's always, we have to justify why. It's almost like, oh, well, you got to understand he shouldn't have ran, or we have to justify why we're killed.
Exactly.
So it's like, oh, well, he didn't stop when the police said stop, or he didn't have his hands out of his pocket, or he ran when the cop said this or that. It's like, we have to justify being killed. It's unbelievable, bro. So it's almost like so many of our young black men and women are being modern day lynched and gunned down, and we have to always justify. Or what happens is the media will spin it to vilify them. Oh, well, he had in 2000 he had a record. He had a criminal record for stealing a Snickers candy bar, or you know, he had a citation in 1998 for walking across the street without a driver's license. So they vilify us and turn us into the villain, versus like vilifying the
killer.
Correct. Really. So, and it's almost like I've never seen where we have to justify why we're killed before. Oh, he shouldn't have been wearing a hood at nighttime. He had his head covered up and he had on a black hat, and they thought it was a gun in his hand.
He shouldn't be running.
He shouldn't be running. Like, these are the things that we have to hear to justify. Now, it's when it comes to our parents, now it's sad when my own mother have to tell me and my brother that she is afraid for us in today's society. That's crazy, bro. For my own mom, who has 2 black sons, to say something like that. Where do we live at? A third world war-driven country? Like, I don't understand. So it's real, bro. It's a real thing. And this is like, you know, the oppression comes in and is packaged different now. It's not just as blatant like it was in the 30s, where, you know, somebody come up to your hood, to your community in white hoods, and you go to have a drink of water or to use a toilet, and it says blacks only, whites only, or coloreds only, or whatever. We are living in a 2020 where there's no excuse for people to pretend that they don't know about racism. It's 2020. And it's like, now people just package it differently now. It just looks cleaner, and it just looks more like politically correct. I can discriminate against you without getting a lawsuit in different ways now. It's compartmentalized.
Yeah.
I can have a smile on my face, wear a nice, you know, expensive suit, and discriminate against you and say, hey, I can do something like, you know, you can work for me. I can do something to you. And then when you get upset about it, I can say, well, I didn't know. I'm white and I'm from here and I didn't know. And then when you get angry, you can say, well, you made me afraid because you got aggressive with me. I'm afraid of you now. Now I call the police. The police come. Now you happen to, I'm the victim now.
Even though you started it. This is how it's packaged now. It's a difference. So it's like, I can do something to you. When you get angry about it, I can say, well, I didn't know. I didn't know that was racist. But now you're scaring me, though, because now what you're doing is, I'm frightened. Let me call the police. This is how it happens. This is how it happens every day, bro.
Yeah.
And then if you openly discriminate, then it's freedom of speech.
It's freedom. But freedom of speech, but then there's the consequences after the speech.
Yeah.
Is that freedom of speech?
It's not.
So that's where you at, man. So this is the kind of ideology that we're up against, and this is the kind of system that needs to be broken. Yeah, this is the stuff that needs to be dismantled. Yeah, it's quite ugly.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of times, other communities don't like people. I hear a lot of times people throwing around all lives matter. So my question to them is, if all lives matter, why aren't you mad as well? Our community is the ones that are being publicly lynched. If all lives matter, why aren't you upset as well? This isn't about, all lives do matter, but this is about a specific community that has been attacked. This isn't about the Bangladeshi community. This isn't about the Arab community. Everyone is facing their own forms of discrimination. This is strictly about Black Americans being modern day lynched. All lives do matter. But right now, this isn't about all lives, because this isn't happening to all lives. It's only happening to one community.
Exactly.
People don't get that. So my thing is like, okay, yeah, if all lives matter, why aren't you angry about this as well? That's my point. Yeah.
What was your reaction to when all the the abrupt happened?
I'm just saying, like, obviously.
Man, my reaction, brother, I was watching that George Floyd situation, brother, was tough, because like I've faced my forms of discrimination physically by law enforcement, different racial situations I've had going to school in the South. I've faced forms of these things that I won't even describe, but I do remember like me and a friend of mine, before coming to Australia, the day before I took my flight, I was standing in a park, and me and my buddy, 4 cops pulled up, all white, got out of the car, hands on their weapons, walk up to us. They viewed us as a threat, forced us to get down on the ground. drew their weapons, searched us while we were on the ground, you know, basically saying whatever they're going to say and say we fit a description of someone else. It was just, you know, humiliating because it's like we're standing in the park, broad daylight, just talking in front of the building where we're from. And, yeah, so that's just one example of many, but just to say that, like, you know, you become, I don't want to say we become immune to just dealing with this, but we learn how to adjust with these kind of things in our communities until, like, now it just spills over and people can't take anymore. And as I like to tell people, it's almost like, don't misunderstand that this one incident has sparked the outrage globally from all 50 states in America to more than 18 countries marching and protesting Black lives. This is a combination of incidents and oppression that has built up, and this was just forcing the hand of people to react. That was the tip of the iceberg.
It was going to happen eventually.
Brother, watching that was one of the most brutal things I've ever seen with my own eyes, brother, because to watch a man pardon me, man. To watch a man beg for his mother, who's dead, beg for his life, was horrible, bro. I look at that because that could be my brother. That could be my father. That could be my uncle. It's frustrating, man. And I'm angry on the inside because having to see something like that and know that, like, that could be one of my family members. That has happened to friends of mine who fortunately didn't lose their lives. But if you come and speak to any African American, we all have stories like this, where some of us have lost family members to white supremacy, to police brutality, through lies. White lies have been imprisoning Black people for years. All you have to do is, from white lies to police brutality, you can look at Emmett Till. You can look at, you know, the Central Park Five, from a long list of people.
Oh, that was tough.
So all I'm saying is that hurt me, because I can see that man didn't deserve that, bro. Even if he did give them a false $20 bill, did he deserve to die?
No.
Over a $20 bill. Ridiculous.
That could have been one of my family members, bro. And even more, my brother. I got a grown brother, bro. 35-year-old brother who lives not far from where that happened. So I get emotional because, bro, it's inhumane. And you think about it like, man, that could be one of my family members. So yeah, it hurts. It hurts, bro.
Do you think people sharing those videos of George Floyd was inhumane itself, or did we need to see that? Because it was very explicit.
I think we needed it, man. Yeah. I mean, I think the world needed to see this brutality because people across the water, like here in Australia, people in Australia don't really understand the amount of oppression that we receive. They only see something like that, and they think this is just an isolated incident. Like, oh, you know, I didn't realize racism was that bad. You know, that was pretty bad. Is it really that bad over there? But, bro, Black people, though, you guys do this to each other, though, bro. It's always like excuses to find reason to agree with why it's happening to us. That's why I say that it's very important for people across the board to understand Black history, starting with the Atlantic slave trade, moving down to, you know, the Civil War, to civil rights, to redlining, to everything I named. Because if you don't know anything about these things, you don't know history in terms of Black history, and you won't understand the systematic racism that's put in place. You won't understand it. Because watching one incident of a man lose his life is not even that's just the start of the conversation. Yeah.
And
And
here
there's
in
just one-
Australia, we don't actually really feel it because think about it. Only a year ago, the document for the Central Park 5 came out.
Correct.
And that went viral. Everyone's watching it. Do you know what I mean? And then after a year later or whatever, the guy that was running and then he got gunned down.
Yeah.
And that only lasted, the outrage for that only lasted like a week or something. And all it took was like George Floyd. You know what I mean? It's like everything is so isolated but only lasts for a short amount of time before we forget again. And I guess the system also wants us to forget it.
I don't know if here in Australia you saw the Breonna Taylor sister who was killed a month or two ago. Off-duty police officers kicked her. And about the other brother, Ahmed Arbery.
Yeah.
So these are other examples of supremacy. Like these are things that this happens so often in our community. These things just happen to be caught on camera. Think about the times that these things are happening and that we don't have the privilege of it getting caught on camera. Because like we have more than, I want to say, don't quote me, but I think it's more than 175 of the past few years, black men and women gunned down, unarmed, killed. Like
That's a number.
Even if it's 100, that's still absurd.
Brother, it could be 2, 1. It's ridiculous. So it's like, it's a very, and a lot of people on this side of the world, meaning Australia, I have conversations with them. It's difficult to get angry with them sometimes because I know people don't know because they haven't even traveled to America and don't know our history. But at the same time, I want people to be accountable. It's like if you want to comment about something that affects something outside of your ethnic group, at least educate yourselves. Know the history first. Don't just look at one incident and how we're reacting. More people are more worried about things like looting and rioting versus the police officer that killed this man.
And that's what's coming on the news more frequently. Like, oh, they did this, or there's this strike, or that. It's like, talk about the incident and why it's happening and how you can improve.
And I say to them all the time, if you guys want to refer to rioting and looting, we could talk about a few things. We could talk about, white youth who in America, they win a hockey championship game or something. They're rioting, turning over cars, setting cars on fire. Even throughout history, white people raped and pillaged Africa for everything, rioted, going through, stealing everything. I mean, this is just like, there's a history of this. So it's like, you're more worried about things that can be replaced versus lives being taken. It's ridiculous. And it's like, they just don't get it, man. And I think people need to have a little bit of more understanding of education before commenting on these topics, because these topics are very, very sensitive and they're very, they're deep rooted to more than just one incident.
And part of the problem is people think that education comes from the media, and the media only, it's fueled by what goes on that's negative. You know what I mean?
Correct.
It gets fueled by the riots and the looting rather than the education and the history behind why everyone is actually rioting.
Because a lot of people want to post what's going to go viral and what's going to get at people's attention. Same as the news. They want to post things. They're going to post boring information. At least, even though it's informative and beneficial, they don't want to post what's beneficial. They want to post which can give a story. Your job is to give a story. And unfortunately, that's not what the news should be, but that's what it is. That's why, that's where social media can come into play to kind of change that. Because social media is controlled by us. The news isn't. So we should be trying to use social media to benefit, spread awareness, sign petitions, and donate money, and support our own kind of thing.
And honestly, the younger generation, like our generation, I've seen positive results with it. Like I was having a chat with one of my friends that was white, and her family is Persian, and she was explaining how her mother and father watch the news, and she's also watched the news. They've both obviously been exposed to the news, and the way that she sees and the way that they see is completely different. They think is, why are all these black people, why are all these Americans rioting and looting all these places? And she's thinking about, do you not understand the history? You know what I mean? And you got to have that open mind.
Yeah. But people forget that these kind of things, these media outlets are crowding people control. Like they are trying to control the masses of a certain audience. So it's crowding people control, and they control what they want people to see, because people become zombies. People watch the news and that's all they know. They think that the news has given them accurate information. That's what they're gonna go off of. So I mean, and that's fair enough if that's people's only source of understanding a certain topic. But you know, it's when it comes to this particular topic, it's far deeper than just George Floyd is just one example of the oppression we've been facing.
Yeah, and it might not even be the worst. For us, with my own eyes, it's the worst I've seen. But there could be countless cases that I've never even heard of or never even been recorded. Which
all of them are counting the death. They're always bad.
Yeah, brother.
Death is death. Yeah.
We just had and this is a long list. We just had there was a brother by the name of James Byrd. You can look him up. James Byrd was a middle-aged man from Texas, man, who was grabbed by two white supremacists who beat him up, chained him to the back of a pickup truck, and drove him until they dismantled his body parts. These men were just really like sentenced not long ago, just a few years ago. So if these kind of things are happening in the year 2000s, brother, like, you know, come on, man. Like,
that's beyond inhumane. That's
beyond inhumane. So you know, these things are bad, man. These things are very, very. The ideology has to be.
So for us here, like, because we're not in America and we don't fully comprehend, we can try to do the best we can because we have to be empathetic. And what can we do here that can at least improve the situation? Because obviously we're going to try to do our best, and us at Fair Dinkum, we know we're going to keep pushing for this because we know, unfortunately, we're in a generation of trends. People forget about things very frequently. You know, our memory isn't the best. So our goal is to make that not happen as long as we can. So how can we even try to do something? Like, what can we really do long term? Like, what's something that can...
Individually,
or
as communities.
Individually, community, as a family. It's the same thing as before we spoke about, like, teaching your family. But now we want to do beyond this. We want to actually make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's great, man. I think the solidarity and... I'm past symbolisms and tokenisms, man. I need action, you know, because a lot of times, you know, I'm very pleased with people who want to post something on Facebook and say, you know, love wins and all these kind of references and symbolisms, but they really amount to nothing because there's no action involved. So for me, I think the most important thing is to start with educating yourselves a bit on the things that I named about Black history, like understanding how severe the Atlantic slave trade was, how understanding more about civil rights and all of the things that I listed, which will give you an idea of how the system was built and how the system is now, the ideology. And then I think just constantly like sharing with your peers about these things when these topics come up. And, you know, you don't have to wave the flag for Black people, but just if you educate it, you can kind of like teach others and you can kind of like be able to speak firmly on these topics without just the media teaching you about it.
Because racism is taught at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And even just having these type of discussions where at least opens your horizon. Next time you can talk about, you know, Atlantic slave trade, just learning.
Yeah, 100%.
I found out the other day, it's weird, everything on Twitter or whatever, but the pencil, we all used to draw in art class and stuff, and the color for skin color was a light, like pink orange tone. You know what I mean? And that's like institutionalized racism, where it's taught where your skin color or the normal skin color is that white color rather than the black color and this other color. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, it all starts at a young age. So if we have kids, inshallah, in the future, or we have younger siblings, we teach them about this little stuff. Yeah. So then when they get older, they don't discriminate or they don't oppress other people.
If you want to
or
teach
other
them,
cultures.
there's this good book, Childhood Champions. Got a couple coming out.
Yeah, man.
Where can people get this?
Let me see. So
there's 3 of them, isn't it?
Yeah. So basically, the book series Childhood Champions, man. We're available on all platforms. Amazon is the best way. Each book is, you know, available on Amazon. You could grab the books. Our social media is simply childhoodchampions.com.
How about your social media?
Mine is George Green Journey.
Yeah, we'll just
add
it on top.
Yeah, my
Instagram giveaway, maybe. Giveaway coming.
So yeah, the Childhood Champions, man. We are in the process of preparing to release book number 4, and inshallah. So yeah, we're in the business of.
I'll make it easy for you.
Inshallah, I mean, thank you. So we're in the business of trying to, put out some beautiful content for our young ethnic Muslim audience, and I'm really excited about what's in the future.
We can see you're passionate about it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's very
Excited.
good.
Wallahi,
Yeah.
thank you, bro. So
I'd love my little siblings to read that, you know what I mean? Because my little
Inshallah.
sister watches all these Barbie doll YouTube and that, you know what I mean?
yeah,
I'd rather her look up to like Zaki or Childhood Champions, and you know what I mean?
So
It's
Alhamdulillah.
good, man. It's good when the Muslims can support the Muslims, you know, especially like there's Barbie, which is mainstream, but Muslims are a minority, you know, unfortunately, like in the West, that's what it is. So it's good if you can have like Muslim role models to look up to, you know, even you in the youth, mashallah. Inshallah, this project can benefit people as well. You know,
inshallah.
that's what we're here
Yeah,
for.
thank you guys so much too for inviting me on the show.
Alhamdulillah, it was a
This has been
pleasure. It was
sorry,
It was Abdul Ali. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you, man. I appreciate you guys. And yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Apparently,
what's that?
you're related to a superstar.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Say his name for us.
So I'm related to Danny Green from the Los Angeles Lakers. Is my cousin, and we're pretty close, and really proud of him.
Alhamdulillah.
Really happy for his success. He's an incredible, humble, hardworking brother. It was a long, hard fought road for him.
It was, yeah.
Wasn't easy, man. So he's
He's a gun though.
yeah.
Inshallah,
We're very proud of him, man.
Has he asked anything about Islam?
Man, you know what?
'Cause
Nah,
it would be interesting to, you know.
yeah. Danny is really he has a lot of Muslim friends, man, and including me as his family. But he doesn't really get involved with it. He stay away from those kind of things,
Yeah.
man.
Especially
believes in
lifestyle
God.
too,
Yeah.
culture,
Yeah,
you know, situation. In life right now, you could be even very driven and focused on one thing.
Yeah,
It's very hard to start shifting and finding out, you know.
yeah.
That's an
he
internal
believes.
battle.
He's a man of God, man. He believes in God. He just doing his thing. He just stays pretty humble, low key, and
He's a hard worker too.
yeah, he's a hard worker. But he has a lot of friends of all ethnic backgrounds, religions.
Alhamdulillah.
Some of his closest friends are Muslim and his cousins. So
Alhamdulillah. I need to ask for one favor. Sorry.
yeah.
If he does come to Australia, can you hook us up with the episode?
Nah, if he ever makes it out to Australia, I'll definitely
Inshallah.
reach out and maybe see if we can get him on your show.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
That sounds good.
Like, obviously him, but like the main goal is eventually like LeBron James.
We're trying. It's about 2 degrees of separation now.
I've never even met LeBron yet. I've seen him though when I've gone to the games, but I never got
Alhamdulillah.
a chance to chat.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what I did? I met LeBron James briefly. He was in high school still, but that was
Damn.
just random. Yeah,
Damn,
that
early
was-
days. Yeah.
You were there from day one, eh?
Yeah, actually, it was a random meeting I did, but as a NBA player and playing next to my cousin, I've just seen him at games.
Did you used to play NBA?
For
Basketball?
me?
Yeah, you played
No. As
Him. Yeah.
before LeBron made
Yeah.
it to the NBA, I had I met him briefly, and then when he played, my cousin was drafted to the Cavaliers, and they played together a few years. Now they're back playing together. So when my cousin played for the Spurs, I've gone to Spurs game when they've played each other, but I've seen LeBron there.
'Cause he
but I
just
never
came,
talked
like,
to him.
Yeah,
Less than a year ago, he
Yeah.
just joined LeBron.
Yeah. So
But he
now
was
they're
Spurs
back.
for years.
Correct.
Pop
yeah.
loved him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
It's a worthy cause.
Yeah.
But we do have to finish it off here.
Cool,
It was
guys.
very nice to have you on. Thank you
Mashallah,
very
Thank
much.
you so much.
It meant a lot to all of us.
Yeah.
Quick promo for this.
Yeah.
Childhood
Much-
Champions.
Yeah.
Where can we find it?
childhoodchampions.com or Childhood Champions on Instagram or Childhood Champions on Facebook.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, George.
Thanks, guys.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.